The Varnuk Penitentiary wasn't built for justice. It was built for fear. Drifting in the event horizon of a dead star, shielded by layers of null-time fields, dark energy mines, and anti-teleport scramblers, it held one prisoner. Just one. And, tonight, against every law of nature and sanity, someone was breaking him out. Commander Izari pressed her palm against the access node. The door made no sound as it opened. That unnerved her. Everything here was too quiet, like the galaxy itself. That was holding its breath. Behind her, her squad moved in precise silence. 6 rebels, 6 species, all with blood debts to the Coalition, all desperate enough to believe the myths. "Confirm breach," she whispered. A soft chime blinked green. The vault was open. A wave of nausea swept over the group. Not fear, this was different. Wrong. Like space itself didn't want them here. Izari's kitten scraped against her armor as she forced herself forward. Inside the vault was a man. He didn't look like much. Pale skin, muscled but lean. No clothes, no chains. Just sitting cross-legged on a plinth made of black crystal. His eyes were shut. His breathing so slow it was nearly undetectable. "So that's him," muttered Kale, the squad's tech. Izari stepped forward. "Kane, we're here to get you out." The man didn't move. "Humanity is gone," she said. "Burned from every archive, but there are still those who remember, who need you." One eye opened. It was black, not dark black, like a starless sky had taken root in his iris. "You shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. The lights flickered, then exploded. Sparks rained down. Gravity warped. Kale screamed as his arm twisted the wrong direction. Another rebel convulsed and dropped, blood running from her eyes. "Back," Izari shouted, drawing her particle blade. But it didn't matter. The vault had already changed. The room felt bigger, though the walls hadn't moved. The air was thicker. Sound was wrong. Echoes didn't behave. Kane stood up. He didn't walk. One moment he was sitting, the next he stood in front of them, his feet not quite touching the floor. Izari's breath caught in her throat. "We thought you were imprisoned." "You were wrong," he said. "I was contained." He turned and walked through the new vault door as if it didn't exist. It didn't melt, bend, or open. It simply ceased to be for him. Izari stared in stunned silence, then snapped out of it. "Move. We came for him. We finished the mission." The squad followed, racing down failing corridors. Systems crashed as Kane passed. Doors dissolved. Auto turrets aimed and then crumbled into slag. The prison itself was breaking under his presence. Kale gasped behind her. "He's not a man. He's a goddamn singularity." "No," Izari replied, eyes locked on Kane's back. "He's worse. He's human." In the hangar, Kane stepped aboard. Their stolen cruiser, the Whisper Fang, and calmly took a seat in the center of the cockpit. "You're just going to sit there," Izari said, leveling her weapon at him. He looked up. "Where's the flight control interface?" "We bypassed it," she replied. "Too risky to let AI run while inside the ship powered on. Every system. Weapons, engines, shields, everything. And it wasn't drawing from fuel. It was drawing from him." "I'll fly us," he said. "There's somewhere I need to go." Izari didn't move. Her blade still hummed at her side. Where Kane smiled. It was small, but it didn't reach his eyes. "To where they buried my species." And then further. A deep hum reverberated through the hole. The hangar doors blew open. Space greeted them like a mouth ready to swallow. And in that instant, without engines, without thrust, the Whisper Fang vanished into the dark. No jump gate, no FTL drive, no warp signature. And yet, the Whisper Fang reappeared 32,000 light-years away in under 4 seconds. Izari gripped her seat as space settled around them, her mandibles tight with anxiety. The rest of her team were barely functional, some still bleeding from whatever Kane's awakening had done to the prison. Kane sat motionless in the center of the bridge, not piloting, not commanding, just existing. And the ship responded to him like a living thing, obeying its creator. "Where are we?" asked Kale weakly, checking a readout. His voice cracked. "Wait, this is the Terran system." Izari's antennae stiffened. "That can't be." Earth was quarantined. Scrubbed. No one's accessed this system in 2 centuries. Kane opened his eyes. Because they buried the truth under a trillion lies. Before anyone could speak, the Whisper Fang began descending. Not toward Earth, but toward what used to be its moon. The once familiar silver sphere now bore an artificial shell, massive, covered in rusted black plating. Its surface crawling with silent drones and inactive defense grids. "Moon's been converted into a vault world," Kale whispered. "Coalition tech, old but ... massive." Izari stared at Kane. "What's down there?" Kane's gaze never shifted from the viewport. Echoes. The ship docked without resistance. Not a single defense system fired. As if the entire moon recognized Kane's presence. They disembarked into silence. No wind, no sounds. The entrance opened as they approached, revealing a descending spiral tunnel carved in obsidian-like stone. Along the walls, murals painted in light, shifting images. "What is this?" one rebel murmured. They all stopped when they reached the center. A hall of statues, all human, all different. Warriors, scientists, poets, children, hundreds of them, stretching on into the dark. Izari approached one, a female figure with wings of fire and a sword that looked like it had sliced time itself. "This isn't a tomb," she breathed. "It's a monument." Kane stepped between them, walking to a small pedestal at the far end. On it lay a book made of glass. He touched it, and a voice, human, deep, sorrowful, filled the chamber. "If you are hearing this, it means the ascension failed. It means we left something behind, a part of us too dangerous, or too important, to let go." Izari turned sharply. "Ascension." Kane finally looked at her. "Humanity didn't go extinct," he said quietly. "We transcended. We broke through the ceiling of physics, became more than biology, more than time. But before we did, we built me." He paused, as if the words tasted like poison. "They called me a failsafe, a tether, a god in human skin, meant to restart the universe if it ever rotted beyond repair." The rebels stood in stunned silence. "You mean, you were left behind?" Cale asked. "I was the key," Kane replied. "But the ascension fractured. Something went wrong, and the ones who remained, they feared what I might become, so they sealed me, locked me in a prison designed not to hold a man, but to hold an idea." Izari took a slow step forward. "What happens now?" Kane touched the book again. It dissolved into motes of light that scattered across the room, illuminating the murals once more, now showing scenes of impossible battles, collapsing stars, beings reshaped by human hands. He turned to her, eyes glowing dimly. "Now," he said, "I remember who I am." Suddenly, the ground trembled. Deep beneath them, something stirred, an engine older than memory, awakening for the first time in eons. Cale checked his scanner. "There's a power source coming online. Big, planetary scale. Maybe bigger." Kane smiled faintly. "They thought they buried us under silence, but silence remembers." Above them, the moon's surface began to shift, because the moon was not a tomb. It was a beacon. The moon shook like a beast stirring from ancient sleep. Deep beneath the surface, hidden reactors powered on for the first time in 1,000 years. Gears the size of cities rotated in perfect synchronicity. Lights flared, and far out in the void, sensors across the galaxy screamed. The humans had lit a match on the Whisperfang's bridge. Izari clung to the console as seismic waves rippled up through the station. Her HUD flickered with warnings. Cale's instruments buzzed with unreadable values. "What the hell is this thing?" Cale shouted, shielding his eyes from the glare outside the view. Kane stood calmly in the center of the room, eyes locked on the moon's shifting crust. "It's not a moon. Not entirely. It's a relay node, a signal booster." "For what?" Izari asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. Kane turned to her, expression unreadable. "For me." The surface cracked, lines of molten energy racing along ancient seams. Slowly, a spiral structure emerged from the heart of the moon, lifting skyward like a blooming flower. It hummed with raw potential. It sang in frequencies no living species should hear. Cale gripped the edge of the console. "This thing's broadcasting across multiple dimensions. It's not just a signal. It's rewriting space-time metrics." Izari's blood ran cold. "You're waking something up," she said. Kane didn't deny it. "Something's coming," Cale added, eyes glued to the scanner. "Multiple warp signatures, coalition vessels. Lots of them, of course." The beacon was never meant to stay hidden if it reactivated. The moment Kane accessed it, the failsafes screamed across every surveillance grid in the galaxy. Izari spun to Kane. "If you're trying to start a war, you're doing a damn good job." Kane finally looked at her. "I'm not starting a war," he said softly. "I'm finishing one." The whisper of that word sent a pulse through the ship. Izari's claws clenched as she stared at him. She'd come to free a symbol of resistance. What she'd found was far more dangerous. The Whisperfang launched from the surface just as the first coalition fleet arrived. A dozen battleships, sleek and bristling with weaponry, dropped into orbit, their guns locked on Kane's vessel. But before they could fire, the rift opened. It wasn't a wormhole, not hyperspace, not quantum drift. It was a terror-jagged hole ripping across. The stars, like the universe, was being peeled apart from the inside. The colors beyond it weren't just unfamiliar, they were impossible. The fleet hesitated. Kane. Izari breathed. "What is that?" He didn't look away from the rift. "It's the first scar," he said, "from the war we lost before we ever fought it." "What war?" Cale asked. Kane's voice was distant, like he was remembering something that hadn't happened yet. "The war against entropy, against stagnation, against forgetting. We tried to push past the edge of existence. The universe pushed back. The Ascended left, but I stayed. I was made to stay." The rift widened. One of the coalition ships, curious or panicked, fired at the anomaly. The beam touched the edge and simply vanished, not absorbed, not deflected, erased. The ship soon followed, imploding into a flower of golden static, gone in a blink. The other ships didn't move. Their captains had seen enough. Izari turned to Kane, her voice trembling. "If this is what you can do, what are you going to become?" Kane answered without emotion. "What I was designed to be. The Prime Engine's operator." Cale backed away. "The Prime Engine's a myth, a device that can rewrite physical law. It can't exist." Kane's faint smile returned. "Most myths are just truth with trauma." Behind them, the rift pulsed slow, like a heartbeat echoing across creation. "Set course," Kane said. To where? Izari asked, stunned. To the forge, he replied, where I was built, where the universe first learned to be afraid. And with a blink, the Whisperfang slipped into the tier, leaving behind a galaxy no longer certain of its own rules. The galaxy was sick and Kane was the symptom. Across Coalition space, warning sirens echoed through space stations, military citadels, and biosentient archives. The protocols weren't just red alerts, they were extinction codes. One word blinked across every secure channel in pulsating crimson. Contagion. Inside the Whisperfang, the crew watched as they slipped between dimensions. The space outside the ship wasn't black, it was fractured. Shards of realities slid past the hull like broken mirrors, each showing reflections that shouldn't exist. A star bleeding, a city screaming backward in time, a child aging into dust in one blink. Kale sat slumped against the navigation console, his hands trembling. This isn't travel, it's infection. We're dragging pieces of wherever Kane came from into our universe. Kane stood near the heart of the ship, watching the rift space flow past them. You can't infect something that's already dying. Izari tightened her jaw. We've heard enough riddles. Tell me what the forge is, what's waiting for us. Kane turned, his black eyes dimly glowing. The forge is where they made me, before the ascension. Before the galaxy learned to pretend it was in control. It's where human minds bent the laws of nature into weapons, and then sealed them away. Sealed them away? Kale asked. They were afraid, Kane said simply, and rightly so. Before Izari could respond, the ship shuddered. An alert flashed across the cockpit. Something's tracking us, Kale said, panic lacing his voice. Through the rift, Kane's face went still. The Coalition activated contagion protocol. They'll send it. The ship shook again. This time it wasn't turbulence, it was dread. Outside the hull, a silhouette appeared. Not a ship, not a creature, something in between. It had no consistent shape. Its body flickered like a frame of existence. Wings made of frozen equations. Its face a mosaic of every species' worst nightmares. Kale froze. That's not a Coalition vessel. That's Kane spoke before he could finish. The Obliterator. A god they built to unmake gods. The creature, or whatever it was, spread its appendages, and space itself bent inward. Gravity screamed. Time fragmented. The Whisperfang groaned under the pressure. Can we run? Izari barked. Kane shook his head. You can't outrun judgment. He walked to the center of the ship, placing his palm on a long-unused interface. Instantly, the ship morphed. Hull plating recoded itself into reflective crystal. Engines split into 12-fold configurations, blinking into other dimensions. The ship changed species. Izari's eyes widened. What did you just do to my ship? Kane's voice deepened, reverberating like thunder. Woke it up. The Whisperfang pulsed with energy, and a spear of pure silence shot from its nose, striking the Obliterator. For a moment, reality tore. The creature staggered, half of it blinking out of existence, the other half blinking into too much of it. Kale screamed. It's adapting. I don't think that even hurt it. Kane nodded. It won't stop me, but it will follow. Follow us where? Izari demanded. Kane walked back to the viewport. The rift ahead of them was closing, collapsing under the strain of paradoxes Kane had dragged behind. We're almost there, he said. The forge awaits. And then what? Izari asked. Kane met her gaze. Then I remember what else I was built to do. Outside, the Obliterator screamed a soundless shriek that splintered thought. Inside, Kane's eyes flashed white. The Whisperfang dove forward through the last sliver of the tear just as the rift collapsed behind them, trapping the Obliterator in fractured space. But it would not be imprisoned forever as silence returned. Kane whispered to himself. They feared what I might become. Soon they'll fear what I already am. The Whisperfang emerged into a space that did not exist on any chart, in any archive, or within any Coalition sensor grid, and yet it had been here the entire time. The forge, a place older than memory, tucked between folds of collapsed spacetime, a hollow sphere the size of a small star, orbiting a massless singularity. Its surface wasn't made of metal or stone, it was made of thought, crystallized intention, and dormant will. Kale stared, jaw slack. This can't be real. Oh, it's real, Kane said, his voice quiet but filled with a strange reverence. The ship descended through a swirling storm of metaphysical debris, broken fragments of equations, ghost particles that buzzed like dying languages, the bones of forgotten concepts. Gravity wasn't just variable, it had moods. The forge opened before them like a blooming iris, a massive aperture revealing the city within. Except it wasn't a city, it was a machine. The interior stretched for miles, platforms layered like ancient gears, towers that hummed with light and moved in fractal patterns. Rivers of data pulsed between walls made of human memory. And in the center of it all stood the core, a massive spire, white-hot and still, wrapped in runes only Kane could read. The Whisperfang landed on a circular platform. Kane stepped out first. It hasn't changed, he said, more to himself than the others. Not one cycle, not one breath. Izari followed, her claws drawn. What exactly is this place? A laboratory? No, Kane replied. This is where humanity ended, and something else began. They followed him across a glowing bridge toward the central spire. Along the way, they passed statues, colossal forms of humans not as they were, but as they had become. Radiant beings with impossible limbs and eyes like black holes, their forms barely contained by physical space. The ascended Kale whispered awe in his voice. No, Kane said. Those who failed to ascend, the ones who stayed, the Watchers, my jailers. Izari slowed. If they stayed, are they still here? Kane stopped at the base of the spire. Not here, but not dead either. They became part of the forge, merged with it. I can feel them now, watching, listening. He reached forward and pressed his hand to the spire. The entire forge groaned like a sleeping god disturbed. Light raced across the machine city platforms. Shifted towers bent inward. Massive arrays unfolded from the outer shell like wings of a beast preparing to launch. Kale's instruments lit up in protest. Energy levels are climbing fast. This place is pulling power from everything. Stars, dark matter, cosmic background, radiation. It's waking up. Izari pointed upward. Then they'll know where we are. The Coalition. That thing we left behind. They already know, Kane said. The sky above shimmered, dozens of Coalition fleets dropping from hyperspace, surrounding the invisible coordinates of the forge. More than any battle force Izari had ever seen, a message came through. Unbidden. Hacking there comes. Voice calm, polished, mechanical, unknown human entity. You are designated Class Omega Contagion. You are in violation of Galactic Continuity Accord 01. Surrender and submit to annihilation. Kane didn't blink. They still think they're in control. Izari grabbed his arm. You brought us here for a reason. What is the forge to you? Kane turned slowly to face her. His eyes glowed with something deeper than light. The forge was my cradle, he said. Now it's going to be my sword. The spire pulsed. Above, a storm formed, not of clouds, but of raw possibility. The forge began to transform, folding itself into a shape that had no name, designed by humans who no longer existed. A weapon, built to rewrite outcomes. Kale gasped. What are you doing? Kane smiled, calm, terrifying. I'm giving humanity its final word. The forge breath tanned the galaxy flinched. Above the ancient machine world, the Coalition fleets moved into strike formation. Warships, dreadnoughts, carrier swarms, even thought-form weapons orbiting in extratemporal shells, all aimed at the forge's core. On the bridge of the Whisperfang, Kale's voice trembled as he read the incoming data. They've deployed 5 Omega-class anti-deity platforms. Those things are designed to collapse timelines around threats. They're going to erase us. Izari turned to Kane. You said this place was a sword. I hope to every cursed star you weren't lying. Kane stood motionless in the center of the forge's command chamber, now fused with the Whisperfang systems. Lines of light had woven themselves into his skin, pulsing like veins. The spire behind him spun slowly, each revolution louder. Then the last. They thought ascension was an escape, he said, but it was a retreat. We never learned how to fight the universe, we only learned to leave it. He lifted a hand. The forge answered. High above, the space between ships ruptured, not torn, peeled like a scab. What emerged wasn't a beam or missile. It was a concept, weaponized logic, a virus made of clarity. When it struck the first dreadnought, the ship didn't explode. It remembered that it was impossible, and it vanished. The rest of the fleet opened fire. Reality collapsed into a screaming chaos of antimatter spears, black hole warheads, and temporal hacks. All of it struck the forge's shields made not of energy, but of intention. They absorbed the attacks and transformed them into possibilities. Those possibilities became fuel. Kane stepped forward. They called me a contagion, he said, but I was the cure. Kale staggered as the forge launched its counterattack, not with brute force but elegance. Each pulse from the core rewrote the battlefield. Ships became clouds of stardust. Missiles turned to harmless photons. Enemy AI forgot their directives and wept in digital tongues. Izari stared, horrified and amazed. You're rewriting their reality. I'm restoring ours, Kane replied. A sudden ripple tore through the sky. Something was coming. Something angry. The Obliterator. It clawed its way out of the collapsed rift Kane had left behind. Its shape now twitching violently, warped from its brief imprisonment in non-space. Its wings tore through logic. Its shriek shattered quantum fields. This was no longer a Coalition construct. It had mutated. Kale screamed. It followed us. It's not just hunting you anymore. It's adapting to everything. Kane narrowed his eyes. Good. It's time to test the edge of my blade. He stepped onto the platform, raising both arms. Around him the forge obeyed like a loyal beast. It folded upward, becoming a weapon more abstract than any war engine ever forged. A lattice of time-threaded anchors and massless blades, spinning in defiance of physics. The forge fired. Nodded. The Obliterator butt into itself. The blast fractured Kane's own core, code-splitting his consciousness into thousands of versions, each tethered to a probability strand. These echoes launched like celestial daggers, converging on the Obliterator from every angle and every potential timeline. Izari shielded her eyes. You're killing yourself. No, Kane said from all directions at once. I'm unmaking the one thing they never accounted for me. The Obliterator screeched as the Kane echoes pierced its form, anchoring it to a singular timeline. Once fixed, it could be wounded. Once wounded, it could bleed, and it did. Black ichor poured from the creature, evaporating existence as it dripped, but it wasn't enough. It reached out, clawing toward Kane's true self. Run, Kale shouted. Kane stood tall. There's nowhere left to run. He stepped into the maw and the forge followed. There was a scream, then silence. The forge dimmed. Yzari fell to her knees. Heart pounding. Is he gone? Kale whispered, but no one answered. Not yet. The forge fell silent, not in the way of power loss or destruction, not the hush of something dead. It was the silence of breath held between moments, a quiet so deep it bent light, slowed time, made Yzari feel like she was the last living thing in the universe. She floated alone above the command platform, weightless gravity suspended. Kale drifted beside her, barely breathing. Around them, the once living machine had stilled. The towers no longer moved. The rivers of thought had frozen into glass. The core of the forge, now dim, pulsed only once every few minutes, like a dying heart refusing its final beat. Where is he? Yzari whispered. Kane. Kale shook his head. I don't know. I can't feel him. Not even residual energy signatures. He's just gone. But we're still here, Yzari said. So the obliterator must be. She couldn't finish the thought, because that thing, that weapon, that abomination born of fear and contingency, had been more than a machine. It had been a cosmic failsafe, a godkiller wrapped in paradox, and Hayden Kane had walked into it willingly. Hercom's crackled, static, then a voice, quiet, flickering like candlelight. Kale, she turned sharply. Kane, I'm not all here anymore, the voice said. I exist between echoes now, between outcomes. Kale accessed his console. I'm getting unstable waveform data like he's fragmented across overlapping realities. Kane, what did the forge do to you? It fulfilled its purpose, he answered. It remembered me. The image of Kane shimmered before them, half light, half shadow. He stood barefoot on a field of glass that wasn't really there. His body flickered, armored in ideas, eyes burning with unspent futures. I forced the obliterator into a singular timeline, he said. I anchored it where it could be touched, and then I bled it dry, but it marked me. I can't stay. Yzari stepped forward. You are staying. You said the forge was your sword. We need you. Kane smiled sadly. The sword was never meant to be held forever, only swung once. Kale frowned. Then what now? The coalition will regroup. They'll try again. They fear you. They should, Kane said. But not because I'm coming back, because you are. Yzari's throat tightened. What do you mean? Kane turned his head, and the forge began to hum softly. Its first sign of awakening since the battle. I uploaded part of myself into the forge's memory. It's rewriting its protocol. No longer a cage, no longer a sword. Now it'll be a seed. A seed of what? Kale asked, barely daring to hope. Kane looked up. Of choice. Then the forge cracked. A slow radiant fracture split the inner surface, not destructive but generative. From within, golden light poured outward, shards of Kane's legacy scattering like pollen on a cosmic wind. They weren't weapons. They weren't AI. They were possibilities. Yzari watched in wonder as the forge unspooled itself, releasing fragments across the galaxy, encoded with something deeper than knowledge. Hope. This is what humanity always meant to become, Kane whispered, his voice fading with each pulse. Not rulers, not monsters, not myths, just a reminder of what? Yzari asked, that even in a universe built to control everything, one unpredictable thought can still tear it apart. The image of Kane flickered one last time. Then, gently, it bowed. And was gone. Silence returned, but it was a new silence, not death, not dread. The silence of breathing again after drowning. The forge powered down, folding itself inward, becoming a monument, untouchable, unreachable, and waiting. Kale slumped to the floor. He's really gone. Yzari stared at the stars outside, watching the golden seeds scatter across galaxies. No, she said quietly. He's everywhere now. They tried to erase him from history. Within hours of the forge sealing itself, the coalition launched a massive redaction initiative. AI archivists, memory erasure teams, and datanet purges aimed at deleting every trace of Kane from the known galaxy. They scrubbed battle logs, they silenced every witness, they even issued new maps that pretended the forge had never existed. But it was too late, because Kane wasn't data, he was consequence. The golden seeds cast from the forge had taken root quietly, invisibly. They settled into minds, machines, and matter. Some landed in the dreams of philosophers, others altered the coding of newborn AI. One sparked a rebellion on a planet that had forgotten what freedom felt like, and on the edges of known space, among rogue captains and borderworld storytellers, the name began to spread. Kane, the last human, the one they buried in a prison outside time, the one they broke free, and the one who broke the universe right back. Yzari stood on a crumbling balcony overlooking a quiet city on Tharnes 3, far from the coalition's grip. Months had passed. The Whisperfang now lay buried under a mountain, cloaked in time's silence to keep it hidden. Kale approached from behind, holding 2 steaming cups. No attacks this week, he said. Coalition's still licking its wounds. Izari accepted the drink, nodding. They're scared, not of us, of what might come next. Kale leaned against the rail. You think it's true that the Forge changed the fabric of the universe, that Kane's is still out there somehow? She looked up. The stars above sparkled like shattered promises. I don't know, she said, but I've seen signs. Children born with impossible talents. Sentient species waking from engineered ignorance. Planets with weather patterns shaped like runes. Kale smiled faintly. Sounds like a myth in the making. It is, she agreed. And myths are the most dangerous kind of truth. He hesitated. You regret freeing him? Izari's eyes hardened. No, I regret waiting so long. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small, hexagonal shard, a piece of the Forge, still humming faintly. Not a weapon, a message. Kane had left it in her mind during his last echo, and one day she would understand how to unlock it. Until then, she kept it close. Elsewhere, the ripple continued. On a planet called Virion, a schoolchild painted Kane's with face on a wall, though she had never been told his name. In a dream, an elder AI who had served the Coalition for centuries blinked awake and wept, whispering we were wrong. And in the black between galaxies, where ships didn't go and light refused to linger, a new star appeared briefly, brilliantly, then vanished. Some say that was the Forge's final breath. Others say it was Kane's return, but no one knows. For sure, what they do know is this: the galaxy feels different now. Looser, wilder, more alive. As if the gears of fate no longer lock so tightly. As if something deep in the machinery of destiny had been kicked hard. Just one sand thrown out of alignment. People talk now of resistance, of change. Of the right to choose their path, even if it leads to chaos. And always at the center of these whispers is the name Kane. They tell his story in hushed tones and back alley dens. In the pulse code of ancient satellites. In the lullabies of the outcast and forgotten. Not as a hero, not as a god, but as a spark. One that refused to go out, and so the universe, no matter how hard the Coalition tries, remembers him. Because Kane was not meant to be worshipped. He was meant to be remembered. And as long as even one mind dares to question, to defy, to dream, Kane lives.